So, a group of financial heavy hitters, we're talking people from BlackRock, Citadel, and even the former head of the European Central Bank, they all got together recently to debate one huge question. Are we basically living in a repeat of the Roaring '20s? Today, we're going to break down exactly what they said. And the stakes here, they couldn't be higher. I mean, are we on the verge of a new decade of incredible, explosive innovation? Or are we repeating the exact same mistakes that led to a global catastrophe a century ago? Let's dive in and find out. You know that famous Mark Twain quote? That's what the historian Adam Tooze brought up, and it's the perfect frame for this. We're not looking for a perfect carbon copy of the past. Nope, we're searching for the rhymes, those uncanny parallels between their time and ours that just might tell us what's coming next. All right, so the first and honestly the most obvious place these two decades rhyme is the tech boom. Both the 1920s and the 2020s were kicked off by these absolutely world-changing breakthroughs that promised a whole new golden age of progress. I mean, just look at the scale of this comparison. It's pretty striking. The 1920s gave us the electrical grid, the assembly line, and the car, innovations that completely reshaped society. And today, we've got artificial intelligence and this massive wave of digitalization making those same kinds of revolutionary promises. Citadel's Ken Griffin really captured that modern optimism perfectly. There's this massive hope, right? Especially in the worlds of finance and government, that AI is going to be our silver bullet, the savior that's going to fix all of our productivity problems. Okay, but this is where that historical rhyme starts to sound a little off. Because according to Christine Lagarde, the former head of the ECB, today's technology faces a huge challenge that the breakthroughs of the 1920s just never had to deal with. And the difference is actually pretty simple when you think about it. Back in the 20s, you could build a combustion engine pretty much anywhere, right? Within your own country. But AI? No way. It needs gigantic scale. It needs almost unlimited access to data. And it absolutely requires countries to cooperate. And, well, those are the very things that seem to be under threat in our fragmenting world. And that leads us right into the second big parallel, this really dangerous turn away from global trade. Look, this is one of those history lessons we really can't afford to ignore. In 1930, the US slapped these huge tariffs on imports, even though pretty much every economist was screaming not to. And what happened? A massive trade war that sent global trade off a cliff, plummeting by 60% and making the Great Depression so much worse. Now, have we seen a total collapse like in the 1930s? No, not yet. But the panel was basically waving a giant red flag here. We are seeing a spike in trade restrictions right now that is unprecedented in the modern era. The trend is absolutely pointing in the wrong direction. All right, but now we get to what might be the single biggest and scariest difference between then and now. And honestly, it's a jaw-dropper. I mean, the contrast here is just staggering. In the 1920s, the United States, the biggest economic power on the planet, was actually running a budget surplus. They had their financial house in order. Today, the US is staring down a deficit of truly historic proportions. $38 trillion. That number, it basically represents our entire modern playbook. Whenever there's a crisis, the answer is to just throw money at it. But that leads to a terrifying question. What happens when we finally run out of money to throw? And Ken Griffin did not mince words here. He argues that back in the 1920s, the recklessness was all in the private markets, in the stock market. But today, the recklessness is coming from governments themselves. This fundamental weakness, he says, is the defining and most concerning feature of our time. So, okay, we've got a tech boom that needs cooperation, rising protectionism, and this staggering mountain of debt. With that shaky setup, the panel got to the million-dollar or maybe trillion-dollar question, what on earth happens next? Christine Lagarde laid out 3 key tripwires we need to watch. First up, energy. Can we even power this whole AI revolution without completely derailing our climate goals? Second, jobs and society. The potential for social breakdown here is massive. And third, the debt itself. If all that borrowed money isn't actually funding productive growth, it just becomes a dead weight, dragging our entire future down. But here's the thing, and this is so important. Back in the 1920s, the world was locked into a rigid gold standard. They didn't have a lot of tools to fight a crisis. We are not in that position. We have flexibility. Our choices, the ones we make right now, are going to determine whether this decade actually roars or just whimpers out.
So what's the one thing that will decide which way it goes?
And that brings us to the final word from Christine Lagarde. The outcome isn't preordained. It all depends on us. Her plea was for what she called minimal cooperation, a basic recognition that our biggest challenges can only be solved if we actually work together. It's such a simple idea, but in today's world, it might just be the most radical one of all.